All right. So, super excited to have a very special guest today. And I am excited, like over the moon excited, to introduce you to Trish Blackwell. She is the host of an iTunes top ranked podcast called The Confidence Podcast, and it has over 6 million downloads. Like, wow. Over 575 episodes and over 1,200 5-star reviews.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing. So, Trish, thank you so much for being here today on the Bossing Up Overcoming OCD show.
Erin, I just think we're going to have a really great conversation. I think you and I, well, we've already talked. We kind of used to be neighbors. We would have been great neighbors, right?
Yes,
I feel
completely.
like we're going to have a great time chatting today. So thank you for having me on the show. And we're talking about something that's going to hopefully really give your audience and your listeners some encouragement, some tools.
Absolutely. Well, and part of, with my audience, I know and my clients is just noticing their lack of confidence in themselves. And I've been listening to your podcast and I'm a huge fan. And so in reaching out to you, I think it's just been a wonderful communication, and your work is very beautiful too. And so with the theme of our discussion today, it's all about self-trust. So yeah, I think that's going to be huge because I can see how that totally plays into confidence. And I'm curious, what led you to focus on self-trust?
Well, so on self-trust and confidence are so intertwined. And the reason I got interested in the first place, so a little bit about me, if you're new to my work, is I am that typical Enneagram 3 type A personality, like overachiever. And I love being wired that way. But as we know with our personalities, there's a healthy expression of it and there can be an unhealthy expression of it. It can be a double-edged sword. Right. And so, most of my life story is about achieving and always pushing for more. And so though the world may have seen me as very confident on the outside, on the inside, I never felt like I was doing enough. And I always felt pressured that everything was going to fall apart. I needed to do more. And it was like, you reach that finish line and then it's the invisible finish line that moves. And so there was always this pursuit of more. What it did is it sparked that internal dialogue and a belief that was false that I'm not doing enough. And if I'm not doing enough, I don't trust. Fundamentally, I'm communicating to myself. I don't trust myself. I don't trust myself to be doing enough, because that means I either am mismanaging my time or I don't trust my knowledge. I used to overstudy for tests or over-prepare for presentations. And you think about that. Why is that? Because we don't trust ourselves. And my background is a Division I collegiate athlete. I was a swimmer in college and very competitive. And it became a problem. My confidence became a problem. And I used to love to race and I used to have a ton of confidence in a race. But when I started overthinking and I didn't trust myself against somebody, I didn't trust my training, I would sabotage a race and I would get beat. And my coaches would say, Trish, we need you to trust yourself. We need you to trust your body. We need you to trust your training. And I was like, but how? Which is why I'm really I love providing basic tools for confidence to help people know, here's the how. Because at the time I needed it the most, no one knew how to teach me the how. They were like, just relax. And I was like,
right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. That doesn't help me.
I know.
Yeah, not to the type of thinker that I am.
Yeah.
Right. And so learning how to think, and give myself tools to support and to trust. And what I learned over my 12 years of working in the coaching industry that I've been doing is, gosh, the more you build the skills and the tools, the skill of self-trust, the deeper you're building an intimate relationship with yourself. When you can trust yourself, your level of confidence increases, your self-efficacy increases, your belief in your ability to do something, your belief in your ability to follow through, all of it just up levels. And furthermore, when you trust yourself, there's so much more internal peace. And that's what we want.
Absolutely.
Just, you know what I mean? Like that peace and security. So that's why I'm really into it.
Oh, absolutely. And, even listening to your podcast, you're passionate about everything. You bring so much passion to, your conversations and everything. It makes it really enjoyable to stay engaged as a listener. So
thank you. I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah. And so the self-trust, it comes from just being, doing life, right? The overachieving really drives you to there's no end point and you don't know how to stop. So it sounds like the self-trust is that key to kind of stopping yourself from overdoing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
There's
sounds
an
painful.
overdoing. Well, it's hard to say because we think more is better. And we
Yes.
kind of have to go against for those listeners who are in America, this American like cultural thing that like is a tsunami that's like, yeah, if a little bit's good, then a ton must be better. If you just go over and do more, it should equal results. And it doesn't always, because overworking, overstudying, over preparing can actually sabotage self-trust, because what's happening is that you are then putting pressure on yourself. The minute you put pressure on yourself, you sabotage yourself and you will not perform to the highest level. So one of the ways we build self-trust is by acknowledging what we have done well, acknowledging where our strengths are. Even sometimes taking a risk to say, I believe I know. Self-trust when it comes to studying for something, you're preparing something, is an easy example. So if you're studying for a big interview or a big, passing the bar or something that's like, quote unquote, very important.
Right.
Because the minute you say it's really important, now you're putting pressure on yourself. And the minute you put that emotional weight of pressure, it's very hard to trust yourself. And so we want to be careful where our emotions are, but we need to acknowledge and validate and say, like, you know what? I'm really good at information. I'm really good at what I do. I've studied this well. I trust my training. I trust my education. I trust my study. Have to fill in the blank, but we have to start giving. I think we want other people to tell us, you got this. We have to be the ones who give it to ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And really that trust coming from within could be a game changer for people, because oftentimes with OCD, they'll get the reassurance, but it doesn't fix it, right? It may give them a short-term fix, but not in the long term. And so they continue to get reassurance and validation over and over. But then in the work, it's about, we got to trust ourselves. We got to have this healthy mindset and know the real you. Like the real you studied, the real you has good intentions. The knowledge is there, Yeah.
And if I would speak from personal experience, I grew up with I grew up with a parent who had some OCD tendencies, which, you then mirror what you are taught. And so there's some certain behaviors I've noticed in my life that I will triple or quadruple check something. And you can easily justify it by saying, well, I got to make sure the stove is off 4 times. And I've had to be very mindful in my own life of some of that. And I'm no expert on OCD by any means, but I have learned when it comes to self-trust with small behaviors like that, once I know that I've done something, and it's particularly some area where I might have a tendency to want to double, triple, quadruple check something, to say it loud, I trust myself.
I love it.
I've done it. I mean, it's really interesting because it's so simple. And I'll go, I have turned off the stove. I've checked it twice. I've unplugged my little space heater. Trust myself.
Yes.
And then you're able to, so it's really interesting. You're even able to use your words out loud to say to yourself, like, I've done it. We can talk in the context of daily life stuff, or OCD or over preparing for something on bigger things. But fundamentally, you're right. It all boils down to, we want to know, am I going to be okay? Is it going to be okay?
Yes.
Because in those contexts of passing or failing, or something awful happening or not that we're trying to control, we need to, fundamentally, I am safe. And if something bad or something I don't want to happen were to happen, I also trust that I will be okay.
Right.
That's where we have to give ourselves some peace.
Yes. And you do share your personal story on your podcast, and I appreciate your vulnerability in that. So what is it, episode 444?
Yeah, it's easy to remember, 444.
Yes. So if the listeners want to go check that out, because you have, the story to back it up about how, you've been through some things and then learning that things are going to be okay because you trust yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in the very short picture of that, I've had a lot of rock bottoms in lots of different ways. And that episode definitely breaks it down. And I had to learn to trust myself again. I had to learn to trust other people. I actually, and my faith is a very important part of my life, but I had to also learn to trust my relationship with God again. Trust was really integral to a lot of my healing. In lots of ways, right? And so and if you're struggling with trusting yourself, you have to then go, why, what am I afraid of? Because when we don't trust, like if I don't trust a friend, I have a certain friend who says, and I love her, we can love somebody, but not trust them.
Ooh,
which is interesting.
It is.
You can love them, but not trust them. And so there's certain friends I love, but I don't trust them with my secrets. There's certain friends I love, but I don't trust them to do what they say they're going to do.
Yes.
I think they're lovely people. They've got great ambitions and they say they're going to show up or they say they're going to do this. Yes. And then they overcommit. So it's not a personal attack on them intending to be untrustworthy, but the friends that you're worried about, like if I'm going to go drive to Starbucks to meet my friend, do I trust she's going to show up? I know which friends won't. And so I can love that friend, but also not be pressed to get to that Starbucks on time because I know they're either not coming or they're going to be 20 minutes late themselves.
Exactly.
All that to be said, you have to go, if I'm going to be the one person I'm in a relationship with my whole life is myself. We want to go, what can I do to build trust with myself? How can I show up for myself more in small ways, which comes down to keeping your promises to yourself or being or doing what you say you're going to do. But when I question if I'm going to trust somebody, if you're dating, for example, should I trust them? Is he have integrity? You what am I afraid of if you can't trust him? And so if you can't trust yourself, we have to ask ourselves, what am I actually afraid of? I was working with a client on this and we were working on some post-eating disorder thoughts that are still bothering her. And we got down to the core thought was, she said, I don't trust my body. I think my body wants to be fat. And so she didn't trust that because she was like, we're over exercising over all the things.
Yes.
But the core of belief was the problem. And so we didn't trust the body. Now we can fix some of the behavior and the compulsion activities based on fixing the trust at the core of, hey, what can we do to build trust with your body?
Right.
We show ourselves that our body's actually been trustworthy our whole lives.
Yes. And these women that I work with for OCD, a lot of them are so afraid of A, losing control, or B, things changing. So I think self-trust would be the key part in helping them navigate that change, because in the end, they're going to trust that it'll be okay because they're going to make sure it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Because you can look at yourself and go, I've been a person who's proactive and also values control over what I can control. And I'm wise enough to know I can't control change. Change will happen. Change is inevitable, but I can control my thoughts about myself, which means if I know I'm good at managing all of the curveballs that come my way now, that means I can trust that I'm equally capable post change to handle anything that comes my way. Right. Like I trust that I can pivot. I trust that I can make a modification. I trust that, I trust my ability to be on top of that is how we can build the trust. We can't trust. We don't know what's going to happen politically. We don't know what's going to happen economically. We don't know what's going to happen in the people we love.
Right.
There's a lot out of our control, but we can trust our ability to handle it.
Yes. So would you say that self-trust really builds into resilience?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you trust yourself and you trust your ability to be curious, to be flexible, to be innovating on what you need to do or what you don't need to do, what you need to change, then you really can do anything. You can push any boulder up any mountain. No, it might not be fast, but we can move forward. Right? We got to release this need to do things at a certain speed and instead just be okay with progress, continuous improvement.
Right.
And insight is continuous improvement. Anytime we can learn something about ourselves, we've grown, we've made progress, right?
Right. So in making those promises to yourself as a high achiever, sometimes you get overcommitted, right? Yeah. So how do you coach ladies in particular? How do you coach them to not overextend themselves? Because it happens, right? You put 20 things on your to-do list, that's not realistic. So,
right. So we have to be loving enough to ourselves to allow ourselves to be human. And this is where I really, how I mentioned earlier, self-trust is the byproduct of having built friendship with yourself.
Yeah.
Which is, we think about which friends do we trust, which ones we don't. And so often little things, sound like they're intentionally not showing up for us or they're intentionally irresponsible
Yeah.
But you're like, okay, but the ones I trust, they just take the relationship and the friendship more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
To communicate well. So to communicate with yourself well, which means journaling, understanding yourself. So in the same way, you would be friends to somebody. If you saw a friend over scheduling, you'd be like, babe, why? Why are you doing this to yourself?
Right.
Why are you stressed out? You are stressed because you are trying to do 3 people's lives in 2 days. Like, what are you doing? And we would be loving and able enough to tell a friend, like, you need to slow your roll. Like, we can slow down a little bit. You don't need to do all the things for all the people.
Yeah.
And we have to get back to, what are you trying to prove? Why are you overcommitting? I mean, like what are you trying to prove is like a big, especially for high achieving women.
Yes.
But if we were speaking to a friend, we'd be like, babe, what are you trying to prove? You're amazing as is. Like, you don't have to go so far over. So we want to take that same conversation we would have to a friend that trusts us and that we trust. And we have to mirror that conversation back to ourselves and be that friend to ourselves. Because when I have done that, when I'm overcommitted or I've stretched thin or I've pretended that I'm superwoman and like, oh, it's fine, I can do it. One, there's some pride there, and I have to be honest enough with myself, and I have to really be curious about, gosh, Trish, what are you trying to prove? Or whose love are you trying to earn by not being a burden, by not needing to delegate or ask for help, or or it's so interesting for me. It had to be, I do a lot. So one, to prove things, for the little golf clap that nobody gives me of like, look how much she can get done. Like, I don't know, like you have to ask yourself, what am I doing this all for? Because I had years of my life where I was just stretched to the max. And then I had to go for what I learned to be a friend to myself. I had compassion, and I was like, why?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because nobody actually
Yeah.
These people I want the golf clap for are not even golf clapping for me. They just think I'm a machine. And meanwhile, I'm driving myself crazy like a machine, pretending to be happy. So it's a good breaking point for me.
Yes, that's a lovely perspective of, be a good friend to yourself.
Which is,
I love that.
We say that. I'm sure people have heard it. It's so much easier said than done. I can speak from my experience. I had a decade-long eating disorder, a super self-critical voice, body dysmorphia. And so some of my eating disordered eating patterns where I didn't trust myself in the kitchen, because I would go through seasons where I would either emotionally eat and binge eat, or that I would starve myself. So I honestly didn't know how to trust myself around food. And that created a deeper message of, well, you can't be trusted. And so I really had to rebuild. And then because I had that thought, you can't be trusted. And then I would sometimes be really proud of myself for being quote unquote good, which is like a whole nother issue in itself. Then I would also then be self-critical and self-judging of myself when I didn't hit the mark. So the self-critical voice taught me to always be just negative to myself and like a bully. And so it's really interesting. You have to learn.
Yes.
If anyone is resonating of being self-critical or hard on yourself, then we need to really go to the base work of like, I'm saying kindergarten, first grade level. This is how you be a friend. Because I had to deconstruct everything, right? In my 20s and 30s to go, I don't know how to be a friend to myself. And so if anybody's feeling that way, please don't feel like you're behind. Please don't feel like you're stupid or that you're disconnected. I think millions of women don't know how to be a friend to themselves because we're so focused on doing and achieving and doing things for others that we've lost connection with ourselves. And so to rebuild a friendship with yourself, you start at that kindergarten, first grade level. Like, let's be nice. Let's do things together. Let's learn to have fun together. Say nice words to your friend. Like, I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, so it's very easy for these elementary school ages. But like, these are the conversations as a parent you have about teaching your kids how to be a friend.
Right. And so it really comes down to that inner voice and learning how to talk to yourself in a friendly way.
100%. A friendly, kind way.
Oh, I love that.
Kindness, right? That's, it's so crazy. And I think so many people listening, so many women resonate that they're kind to other people.
Yes.
But
they want to be too.
Yeah. So we need the desire to want to be kind to others, as to be that kindness to ourselves, to be as deeply ingrained and as high of a value as being kind to others.
Right. Okay. So Trish, what are some daily habits? I've already got some ideas from your podcast, but for the listeners today, what are those daily habits or tips that you do to help you stay connected with your own sense of self-trust?
Yes, totally. So daily habit, the core number one is journaling, right? Taking a few minutes to journal. And really the way I like to talk about journaling is very time boxed. It's less than 5 minutes, and it's starting with gratitude. So a habit of gratitude as well, but to really journal like, hey, is there a thought in my brain that doesn't belong? Is there a negative thought? Like, think about journaling, like brushing your teeth. You're just brushing your brain. There's always going to be some good. There's always going to be some negativity, because I think there's a lot of pushback against journaling of like, well, I shouldn't have to journal to be this happiest version of myself. But we don't say that about our teeth. We don't like, I can't believe I have to brush my teeth this morning. My breath should still be good. No, we're like, it's just a human body. And if you think about how many inputs and how many thousands of messages of not being enough and we should do more that we're getting per day, it's no wonder that we have some self-critical or negative thinking that we need to clean out on a daily basis, right? So to start learning how to reframe your thoughts and have small conversations with yourself. And then another habit that I think is really critical to self-talk is to self-validate, is to, at the end of the day, find 3 things that you say, as if you were saying to a friend. So Erin, if I was like, girl, you know what, today I saw you crushing it at this. And like, I really saw how well prepared you were for this podcast. And you were like, it was just great. Like, just complimenting yourself. Like, you track a win and then give yourself that little, it's better than a golf clap. It's an atta girl. Like, get into the habit of little micro atta girls. Really starts giving you permission to be able to cheer yourself on. When you can learn to cheer yourself on, you're learning to engage in conversation. It's so funny because what I teach people is like, I teach people how to have conversations with themselves. And you go, like, people are like, I don't want to be the person who talks to myself. I'm like, but everybody talks to themselves. Like, that's the number one conversation. The longest conversation you're going to have in your whole life is yourself with yourself. Yes. So let's learn how to have good ones.
Right.
Conversation.
I mean,
well, right. And if you think about, like, socially speaking, a great conversationalist has a skill set of good conversation, of asking the right questions, of listening in a certain way, of being curious, of engaging others. So you actually can improve your quality of conversation with yourself by learning skills of better conversation, better self-talk, better. So I think sometimes people are like, well, it's just how I think. We can always change how we think. It's the one superpower that we have.
Yes. And it's within your control.
It is within your control.
Yeah. Well, again, very much appreciate this conversation today. And Trish, where can the listeners connect with you or learn more about your work?
Absolutely. So, well, if you're a podcast listener, which you are, come check out the Confidence Podcast. Anywhere you find podcasts. On Instagram, I'm Trish_Blackwell. And then, of course, trishblackwell.com. And if you're interested, is my core website. If you're interested in really diving deeper on your confidence, I have an entire school called the College of Confidence, called collegeofconfidence.com. You can find out more there, but lots of great free resources to build the skill of self-talk and the skill of confidence.
Wonderful. And I'll be sure to put all of those links in the show notes.
Awesome.
Too.
Awesome, Erin.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.